Well, welcome everyone to the CIR event today. We're delighted here at EMW to be hosting it today, and certainly with I'm a property litigator, and so is my one of my partners here, James Davis, is a property litigator as well, and certainly this whole AI is something of great interest to us. So thank you very much to the speakers for coming today, and I will now hand you over to James.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for hosting this evening. I'm James Richardson. I'm the branch chair of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. So lovely to see the select few we have in the room and the many more we have online. So really, really great to see some people here today. Just falls to me to give a very brief introduction to the branch and to this evening. So if we move through, so we're the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Many of you online will be members, but some won't. So just briefly, to give you a bit of an idea about what we do, we are the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, but we do all forms of alternative dispute resolution. So you see there arbitration, mediation, adjudication, expert witness, and all sorts. So very much the home of alternative dispute resolution. And our branch covers the Thames Valley. So we do Bucks, Berks and Oxfordshire, and we try and get around. So we're up in Milton Keynes today, which is excellent. Do quite a bit down in Maidenhead, and we've been up to Oxford as well. So we try and cover all areas of the branch. Just a quick plug for our next event, which is our branch dinner.
Date's wrong. It's Thursday. Should be Thursday the 19th. I've just spotted the slide wrong.
Yeah, thank you. The deliberate error has been pointed out. It's Thursday the 19th of June. But what you will be able to do is find that on our branch website. So if you're interested in coming, prices are very reasonable, and we hope to see as many people there as possible and look forward to the evening. And it just goes to be added that the principal guest is the Honourable Miss Justice Jefford. So really excited to have her there as well. Which brings us on to tonight, where we have a really exciting talk on AI in dispute resolution. So I'd like to thank our speakers this evening and welcome them to come and give us their talk. So thank you. Oh, in fact, there was one thing I forgot to say for those online, for those online. Any questions, comments, anything you want to raise, please use the question and answer box. And what we'll do is we'll try and throw some questions at these guys at the end. So question and answer box should be at the bottom of your Zoom link, and you can interact with us in that way. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to our talk on the use of AI in dispute resolution. So just a quick little thing, and this is for the people online as well. We have a QR code up here. So if you'd like to scan that with your phone, we're going to demo an AI app that we've developed and we want to show you guys. So there's going to be a choice of two, and we want you guys to vote on which one you think is most popular. And we're going to go with that as the demo for this app. So I'll just give you like a couple of minutes to do that. And hopefully once that you're on that link, you should be able to kind of choose one of the two options. Okay, and I think we'll head into our presentation. So yeah, welcome to our talk on the use of AI in dispute resolution. So a brief introduction. My name is Kyle. I'm the founder of ContractFlow AI. So a little bit about my background. I studied philosophy at university, and this is kind of where I started like learning about AI. And once I graduated, I was quite keen to get more people to kind of look at AI and understand it, because from what I was seeing, I think people were kind of not paying as much attention to it as they should be. So I started a non-profit program kind of educating people about AI. And one of the cool things that happened is halfway through that program, ChatGPT launched. I think people kind of woke up to what AI actually is. So currently I'm working on ContractFlow AI. And what we do is we use AI to help in the review of construction contracts. See?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in to those in person and those online as well. My name is Hian. I'm an associate at Quinn Emanuel in London, and my practice focuses on international arbitration as well as complex commercial litigation. And here just to give some insights on the use of AI in dispute resolution from a junior lawyer's perspective. So looking forward to tonight's presentation.
Okay, cool. Okay, so as a starting point, I think it's quite cool to zoom out and kind of look at where we are in relation to history. So we live at quite a unique point in history. So on this axis at the bottom, you've got the year, and on the on the y-axis, you've got global GDP. And so what you can see is, effectively, for most of human history, there's been quite a kind of consistent level of GDP, but then we've got this sudden like exponential spike. And if we kind of go into the reasons for why this is the case, you can see that there's a bunch of unlocks or like technological developments that have sequentially led to this very fast kind of rapid growth. So one thing to note is each one of these kind of unlocks is probably unlikely to have happened without all the previous kind of research innovations. And so I guess if we extrapolate this trend out, it's quite interesting to think like, where are we heading as a society and like in the future, and like what the technologies are that are going to bring this about. Okay, cool. So this is a talk about the use of AI in dispute resolution. So what do we actually mean by AI? So AI has kind of become quite hyped recently, but we had AI before, and we had narrow AI. So basically what narrow AI is an algorithm that basically improves a single metric. So a good example of this is the YouTube algorithm. So when you watch YouTube, it will kind of remember all the videos that you watch, and what your preferences are. And effectively what it will do is it's kind of optimize the feed or like the YouTube videos it shows you to keep you on that platform for longer. So it's optimizing the time that you spend on YouTube. So that's an example of narrow AI. But what we've recently entered into is kind of the paradigm of general AI. So general AI is better to think of as effectively a digital brain, which can solve a range of different tasks. So the best example of this right now is probably ChatGPT. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have used it, but I can guarantee that many of you will not be using ChatGPT in the same ways. The ways that everyone uses it is like slightly different. And this is kind of the beauty of using generalized tech. Like it can be used in a variety of different ways. So the next kind of breakthrough is going to be developments in agents. So ChatGPT is effectively generative AI. So you ask it a question and it will give you an answer and response. Agents function slightly differently. Basically, you give them a goal and you give them certain parameters, and they'll kind of use their intelligence and different tools in order to achieve that goal. So an example of this would be a self-driving car, right? So you give it a location and it will try and work out how to get there, and it will kind of have to like follow the rules of the road. If an obstruction comes in the way, it will have to kind of account for that. So that's an example of an agent. And another example is autonomous computer use agents. So these are new agents being developed, which will basically like take over your computer and do tasks for you. So you could say to it, can you book me a holiday? And it will basically look online, find deals for you, and book a holiday for you. So this is kind of leading to what is AGI. So AGI is basically developing intelligence that can do roughly everything that a human can do. And this is what current companies are basically building towards. But an interesting thing about AGI is once you get to human level, there's actually no limit. So you can continue scaling. So you can develop systems that go beyond AGI towards superintelligence. So this is anything which is much more intelligent than a human at doing a specific task. Okay, so who is actually developing this? So you've got a range of companies here, and these are all basically classified as frontier AI labs. So they're at the frontier developing the most powerful models. And yeah, so they're effectively engaged in a race. So there's kind of a race to achieve AGI, who can do it the fastest, because that kind of will unlock like a lot of commercial benefit, but like much more in terms of, well, there's a lot of reward to have having like a very powerful intelligence. You can use it for a variety of different things. And one thing to note is, up until this year, their goal was to develop AGI. Their messaging has changed slightly. So now they're actually looking to develop super intelligent systems, so systems which are much more intelligent than humans.
Really significant besides the names on that, or is it just pictorial?
Yeah, it's just pictorial.
You?
Yeah, so one of the cool things that they're doing, and which is on the frontier as well, is automating scientific discovery. So in that first slide, I showed you a range of different scientific breakthroughs that have been made. And the idea behind these labs is they're actually trying to automate how we come about those. So we're potentially likely to see like very quick development in the future. And yeah, so there's lots of other AI companies. So ContractFlow AI is an example. And what we're doing is we're taking the models and the kind of research that these guys create or develop, and we're building on top of that to make it useful for companies or individuals. Yeah, so with AI, another question or another area is robots. And all of these companies will have like robotics programs that they're working on as well. So you're looking at humanoid robots, you're looking at self-driving cars, and you're looking at other types of robots as well, so like potentially used in manufacturing. And then a final interesting point is that all of these AI companies, except the one in the corner, DeepSeek, are American. So there is potential when you're developing AI to have countries and governments become involved, because having super intelligent systems is actually a national advantage as well. So it can kind of help you at a national level. So there is potentially scope in the future for governments to get more closely involved in that process. So the US and China are the two main countries in this. So we could see more involvement from these governments in the development of AI. Okay, so forecasting AI progress. So a key point to bear in mind is that when it comes to kind of estimating when AIs can do different things, historically, we've underestimated when this happens. So in the past, like the key test of whether an AI is like intelligent was if it could pass the Turing test. So could a competent judge tell if they were talking to a computer or a human? And we've basically kind of crossed that threshold. So it's quite hard now, and the AIs have effectively passed the Turing test, so ChatGPT can do this. So with the agents that I mentioned earlier, these are like systems that work kind of based off a goal. A good way of kind of measuring how effective they could be is by looking at like how long the length of task that they can do is. So on this graph here, we've got on the x-axis, we've got like the year of release. So these green dots represent the different models that have been released. On the y-axis, you've got the time length that the task that the AI can do. And effectively, this kind of orange line is like a trend line, which predicts exponential growth. So in other words, every 7 months, you can get the AI to become 2 times more powerful. And if we extrapolate this up, in 2026, you have an AI that can do a task for 2 hours consistently. 2027, it's 1 work day. 2028, it's 1 work week. And in 2029, it's 1 work month. So this is like a task that one AI can work on continuously without kind of faltering or erring. Yeah, so an interesting point to note is that actually, if we look at the most recent models, they've actually followed this red line here. So development is actually like a lot quicker than we have forecasted. And the implication of this is that if we follow the current trend, it seems like we're more likely to get month-long AIs in 2027. So why is this important? So one of the things that AI agents can do is actually develop more powerful AI agents. So what you get is a thing that recursively self-improves. So you have an AI agent making a more powerful AI agent, and that makes an even more powerful AI agent. And that can happen very quickly. And what this basically leads to is like an intelligence explosion. So you have very, very powerful systems coming about very quickly. And if you look at this plot, basically what it looks like is the second half of 2027, you just have like a sudden burst of intelligence. So very powerful intelligences kind of available to everyone. So it's also important to note that at the same time of like capabilities going up, the cost is going down massively as well. So not only are these intelligences going to be available, but they'll be like very cheap to use. Yeah, see.
Yeah, so we all know that AI has huge implications on daily life, but this is a talk on AI in dispute resolution, so I thought it would be helpful to sort of go back to principles of arbitration and explain how this all ties in AI and dispute resolution. So everyone is familiar with the Arbitration Act 1996, and there are general principles that sort of guide the process of arbitration in England and Wales as well as in other jurisdictions. And broadly, there are the ideas of fair and impartial resolution without unnecessary delay or expense, party autonomy in deciding procedure. So obviously, freedom of contract, you can decide how you want your disputes to be resolved. And you can choose what kind of institutions you like, whether you want ad hoc rules, institutional rules to oversee your arbitration. And also, most importantly, the courts only intervene where the Act permits. And this is also bolstered by the Arbitration Act 2025, which amends the Arbitration Act 1996 and also makes it, in some circumstances, harder to challenge awards. And it's all in the idea of efficiency, cost savings. And that's one of the main reasons, the advantages of arbitration. However, we see that there are still some persistent pain points in 2025, and I'm sure everyone is aware, although this is not unique to arbitration, procedural and party costs can often be a concern for users. And arbitrations can take as long as litigation in some circumstances. And we also note that complex disputes with multiple parties, so think about arbitrations where joinder is involved or consolidation, and there are multiple parties. It can involve a lot of document bundles, and this can add to inefficiencies. So these are the persistent pain points, and we're trying to see how AI can help to assist us in resolving these issues. So looking at AI and how it's being used in arbitration and dispute resolution today, the CIR AI guidelines, which were released this year, talks about some core capabilities that AI has in dispute resolution. And this includes things like data analytics and pattern recognition, so the ability to process huge amounts of text and sort of distill it into summaries for people. It also has text generation, summarization, and translation. So for example, if you're in an arbitration and there are witnesses giving testifying or there's a cross-examination, the AI is able to translate any of these things, a foreign speaker not speaking English in real time and simultaneously as well. So that's pretty useful. And yeah, as I said, real-time interpretation in multilingual hearings. As Kyal mentioned, there is the idea of LLM, so large language models, legal assistance effectively. So ChatGPT, Harvey AI, Claude, these are all LLMs that are able to assist with ad hoc legal tasks. And as I said, it would be helpful to think of them as legal assistants. So they can assist with sort of bite-sized drafting, proofreading, sort of reviewing some correspondence, or even brainstorming strategy. And these are some of the things that AI can do now today. Evidence and e-discovery. I think everyone here knows how painful document review can be. And AI can help with that process. So Relativity, a platform that specializes in e-discovery, recently introduced their Relatively AI-R program. So it's a generative AI document review platform that allows you to review documents for both relevance as well as privilege. And it sort of gives you a first cut of the documents in terms of whether some documents are relevant or whether or not they are privileged. And this has proved to be quite successful. There is a 95% recall rate and a 70% precision rate. And what does this mean? So in precision means false positives. So out of all the positive results, how many of the positive results that the AI has identified as positive are actually false, so wrong? And the recall rate refers to, of all the actual positive results, how many has AI been able to identify. So that's a pretty high rate. And as I said, yeah, it can predict relevance and privilege, surface key documents automatically, and also help to summarize witness statements and other documents to accelerate case strategy. However, there are some cautionary tales. Issues of copyright, for example. So Ross Intelligence is a US legal research AI startup company that was sued in 2020 by Thomson Reuters for the inappropriate use, as Thomson Reuters would say, of the Westlaw platform. So it's a copyright case, and Thomson Reuters actually was granted partial summary judgment in February 2025 this year. Although the case is being appealed currently to the Third Circuit in the US. So just some cautionary tales in terms of whether AI is infringing on copyright, IP issues, and I also wanted to touch on the issue of hallucination. So I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but there are a lot of cases in the news recently where judges or arbitrators have been called out for sort of relying on AI, or people citing cases that don't exist. So these things are real and we have to be aware of them. And that's one of the sort of pain points of AI at the moment. So just ending on a slight note of caution, I guess. But as we can see, it's clearly a lot of uses for AI in dispute resolution, even today.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, so thanks to everyone that's voted on this poll. So we've had 18 of you vote, and it seems like the winning demo is a simulation of two AIs disputing against each other. So if you go to the next slide. So James, on the slide, if you click dispute sim, that should jump you to that example. Oh. Perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is the AI demo that we've got for you. So here we have an example of a construction dispute. So in this case, we've got an employer issuing a late design change and a contractor seeking a 20-day extension with £60,000 of prolongation costs. So yeah, the positions are that the employer says that a delay is concurrent, and the contractor claims that it sits on a critical path. But the difference in this dispute is that both the employer and the contractor have agreed to use basically AI agents and continuous monitoring in the background, which allows for basically a mini dispute simulation to be held between a contractor AI and a employer AI. So what are the benefits of having something like this? Well, you can very quickly get an indicative answer of like what the outcome might be before a formal adjudication. You have obviously cost savings in the case of a dispute. And the thing that I'm quite excited for is like increased trust between parties. And then two principles that we've one principle that we've gone for is neutrality. So each party has control over their own language model. And then we have a third kind of language model that's like evaluating the dispute. And then ultimately these parties are going to agree to use a tool like this in alignment with the CIR guidelines on AI. So if we go to the next slide, this is a simulation of the dispute. So what we have here is the contractor has their own AI and the employer has their own AI. And effectively what they're doing is disputing against each other with the given evidence. And so what you can actually do is, if you click on any one of the chats, you can actually like look under the hood and expose the reasoning. So you can look at the kind of clauses that have been cited and like all the reasoning behind why each of these positions has got kind of been reached. And you also have like citations for each of these at the bottom. So the idea behind this effectively is to run some kind of dispute resolution simulation to effectively get a sense of like, okay, what are the critical clauses going to be? How might some kind of dispute like this actually play out in the real world? And ultimately, if you read like the CIR guidelines, it says you don't really want an AI to make a decision and kind of just go by that decision. So whenever we have something like this, it's always just going to be used as like a kind of a supportive tool. So it's useful to have something like this to effectively support a human judgment. But right now, it doesn't seem likely that we'll have anything like this kind of replace any kind of dispute resolution soon, because we obviously want to keep humans in the loop. Okay, so what are some of the strengths of having a system like this? Well, efficiency, so you get like a very neutral viewpoint quite quickly, and this can be useful for reporting. Transparency, so an important thing is like understanding why LLMs come to the conclusions that they do. So you don't really want to have statements made which are like made in a black box. You want to be able to look and understand why this language model made this like statement. A weakness is that this could potentially be like biased. So there might be bias based off the data that is kind of used. So it could, for example, favor the employer over the contractor. And again, like Z mentioned, there's hallucination risk. So we need to check that everything that it mentions actually is real, because it can often hallucinate cases. Yeah, so there are problems with having this kind of system, because you don't want to rely too much on like AI systems. And obviously, when you're using AI, you're going to have to upload your data. So you need to be kind of careful about that. But there is like quite a big opportunity as well. So if you're using other digital platforms, there's potentially scope to kind of plug into those as well. So get data about how your, for example, construction dispute is like going. You could plug it into a system like this, and potentially even your like e-disclosure platforms. And again, so the main idea behind having something like this is that we have like more high trust kind of collaboration between employers and contractors. So hopefully it leads to like a lot more kind of productive agreements. Okay, so what is the risk landscape for AI? So I'm going to speak about the risk landscape for AI more generally, and then Z is going to go into the specifics in arbitration. But roughly, you can split the risks into two main categories. So the first one is human-driven abuses of AI. So basically people using AI in ways that they shouldn't. And the other is the AI acting in ways autonomously that you don't want it to act in. So on the misuse side, you basically have hackers becoming a lot more powerful with AI tools, so they can make much more kind of realistic impersonation or cybercrime tools. So if you're not ready for this kind of technology, it might be hard to actually spot what's real and what's kind of an impersonation. There's obviously like an increased risk of deepfakes and disinformation. But then with AI, you get kind of like a new category. So we have things like autonomous weapons that could potentially be misused. And also like things like bioweapons. So you can use AIs to kind of actually cure disease, but you can also use them to synthesize potentially quite harmful viruses. So if you were like a malicious actor and you had your hands on like advanced AI, you could do a lot more damage. So we need to effectively put in measures in place to prevent this from happening. And then on the misalignment side, there's like a lot of reasons for why, due to incentives or due to the way the AI is set up itself, it might act in a way that we don't want it to. So a key one is like a loss of control. So you can imagine like a self-driving car, right, going off in a way that we don't want it to do, and like losing control of it. Then you've got goal misgeneralization. So we might ask an AI to do something, and it might kind of interpret that in such a way that we get like undesired outcomes. So an example of this is we've had AIs kind of play video games, and obviously what we want them to do is kind of progress through the levels. But in many cases, what they do is they'll find like hacks within the game to kind of exploit a reward, and they end up just kind of going and playing that same kind of loop, that action like a loop. So they effectively like don't act in the way that we want them to, but they are kind of taking what we've told them literally. Power-seeking behavior. So to achieve any goal, it's actually useful to basically acquire more power. And this is like quite a dangerous thing, right? So we need to make sure that AIs kind of don't go off and like try to accumulate more power in pursuit of their own goals. And then finally, So like an AI arms race. So we don't want development of AI to kind of go out of control. Like we want the benefits of AI, but we don't want kind of companies releasing systems that are unsafe or like not properly tested.
Thanks, Carl. So now I'll sort of talk about some of the risks that have been covered in the CI-ARB guidelines on the use of AI in arbitration. And there are a few risks involved in using AI in dispute resolution. I think the most important is the idea of the risk to arbitral integrity. So we need to guard against rubber stamping opaque model outputs, and also tribunals and parties must disclose any material AI usage in dispute resolution or in arbitration in general. So the idea of the risk to arbitral integrity links quite well to the risk of enforceability. As I mentioned previously, things like hallucinations can erode award validity, and we also need to verify that verify AI-generated content before submissions. And I recently saw on the Global Arbitration Review that someone had applied to one of the courts in the US to actually set aside an American Arbitration Association award because he contended that the parties didn't agree that the arbitrator could use AI, and there was strong evidence that the award was either written by an AI or majority of the award was they had a lot of assistance with writing the award from AI, because when reviewing the award, there were some authorities that did not exist, and also some of the facts were incorrect. And this is something to bear in mind as well. So paying attention to the mandatory rules, what the jurisdiction says about the usage of AI in arbitration. Can this be a ground for setting aside these awards because of due process concerns? These are all things that we should bear in mind. So, in an ideal world, both sides, if they agree to use AI, would have equally competent AIs, but we know that's not true. So there's the idea of due process concerns and inequality of arms as well. Going back to the risk of fairness, so as Carl mentioned, the training data can be biased. It depends on what you feed the AI as well. So we have to bear in mind about that, and the parties should interrogate models for latent bias as well as limits. And the idea of the black box. So previously, Carl mentioned this term, and what this effectively means is that you can understand what you put into the AI in terms of the data that you are feeding it, but in terms of how the AI evolves and functions, it's a black box. Sometimes users aren't able to comprehend what exactly is going on when the AI sort of gives its reasoning, and what the outcome, when it reaches an outcome, we might not fully comprehend the logic or the reasoning that the AI has taken. So the idea of the black box problem and how the algorithmic opacity hinders explainability and appeal, and we need to demand transparency on data and model logic where feasible. The other issue is confidentiality concerns. So arbitration is confidential, and uploading confidential information to the external AI will breach confidentiality unless parties agree that this is fine and they have that agreement beforehand. And we might prefer to be on premises or use air-gap solutions and even apply redaction protocols where necessary. And in connection with confidentiality concerns, there is also the idea of cybersecurity. So that's also a very important concern, because hackers and people who might have not so good intentions may wish to capitalize on certain cybersecurity and issues and concerns and leak certain information. So that's also something to bear in mind.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so we've spoken about AI agents. So an interesting thing to think about is, with the advent of kind of intelligence too cheap to meter, is kind of the catchphrase. What does this mean for dispute resolution more generally? So an interesting thing to think about is that with the current way that disputes are resolved, there are human capacity limits. So there might, for example, be queues to use different dispute resolution methods. There's potentially a scarcity of experts, and costs could potentially spiral out of control. There's also a sense where in a dispute, action is typically triggered when there is some kind of, there is an action usually triggered when there is a dispute, as opposed to having like continuously monitoring of systems. But with the advent of AI agents, it could make having this kind of continuous monitoring a lot more feasible and affordable. So with AI, you can actually unlock like and use a lot of other kind of technological solutions. So I know CIARB has had talks about smart contracts, and there's potential for AI agents to use those. There's also potential to have, for example, dashboards to have like a live trust score of a different contract, and potentially algorithmic adjudications as well. So potentially here, what we could see, and this is like quite speculative, is software agents becoming more and more part of the contract enforcement process, and potentially also gaining expertise. So you could have, for example, proactive monitoring of projects against different agreements. And yeah, and this I think goes back to my idea of like using AI in a beneficial way to increase trust between parties in contract. Okay, cool. So that's kind of like wrapping up towards the end of the talk. So we've got some like general tips as well about using AI and how to prepare for like AI in the future. So the main one is that getting good at using AI is a skill in and of itself. So the more you use these kind of systems and experiment in a safe way, the more of a sense you'll get of like what they can do, what they can't do. So it's worth kind of spending some time like playing around with things like ChatGPT, and building your own kind of sense of like what it can and can't do. And in the same vein, it's like quite useful as well to keep up to date with like what AI can do and what it can't do more generally. Like, for example, in the news or other outlets, you might get quite useful updates on new AI breakthroughs as they're happening quite rapidly. Another interesting point to consider is like if you've ever had ambitious ideas in the past of, oh, it'd be quite cool if there was a piece of software that could do this. This new AI kind of revolution might actually make your old ideas feasible. So it might be worthwhile kind of going back and revisiting any old ideas you've had of like, oh, I wish there was a piece of software that did this. It might be a lot cheaper and more possible to develop now with the use of AI. And I think a big message here is that we might see this future a lot sooner than you may think. So at the same time as being like quite exciting, we want to be like quite cautious and go about this in the right way. So yeah, the catchphrase is we want to get the benefits of AI, but we don't want to see the downside risks of them.
So some tips in terms of specifically the use of AI in dispute resolution. I think most importantly, we need to make sure that you are aware of the data, how your data is being used by the AI products that you're using today. So for example, for ChatGPT, if you're giving it, well, you shouldn't be giving it any confidential information, but you should always switch off sort of the settings that allow that allows ChatGPT to use the data for its own training purposes. Be methodical about how you use AI and become familiar with regulations as well as guidance. So the CIARB AI guidance is a good starting point, as it sort of is very helpful in terms of breaking down AI concepts and explaining how it's relevant and useful for dispute resolution, but also, you know, as we've covered, going through some of the risks involved with using AI in dispute resolution. And the last thing is to understand the potential risks and benefits of AI. So we've covered today the different types of AI tools that even today now can be useful when you are when doing dispute resolution, such as relativity for document review and flagging things for privilege as well as relevance, or just generally using LLMs and chatbots to assist with ad hoc legal tasks. But also being cognizant of the potential risks involved, as we've covered, things like eroding arbitral integrity, due process concerns, confidentiality. These are all things that we have to bear in mind when using AI in dispute resolution.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for listening to our talk, and we welcome any questions.
Guys, thank you very much for giving that talk. We've got loads of questions online, and that's actually rare. We never have this many questions online, so that's fantastic. And I'll throw some of those at you in a minute as well. If there's others who get their hands up as well, please feel free to call on them. What I will say is, when we give you the question, The people online may not be able to hear it. So can you either repeat the question or work the question into your answer, if that's okay? And I'll kick you off with one from online. And it's to do with, I think it's coming at it from an adjudication angle, but it's talking about where a decision maker, adjudicator, arbitrator, uses information from an AI source, such as ChatGPT, to inform their decision making. Could that constitute a breach of natural justice?
So in terms of whether an arbitrator, if they rely on ChatGPT to sort of assist their thought process, I mean, there are definitely natural justice concerns. I mean, it's a difficult question, and I don't think the courts have ever tested this before. It's hard to say. You would have to sort of look at whether the test for setting aside an award on that basis is met in each given circumstance. I mean, in principle, if the parties had agreed that the use of AI would be allowed and the arbitrator could rely on it, and the arbitrator, as per the AI guidance, is upfront and transparent of their use of AI, and that would potentially bring the cost down, then that might be an instance where the usage of something like ChatGPT may be allowed, especially in circumstances where the parties have agreed for it. However, if you have a scenario where this was not provided for in the arbitration clause, for example, and I guess most contracts now would not comment on the use of AI, and the arbitrator goes ahead and relies on ChatGPT, and you can clearly see flaws in the award, facts being pointed out that do not exist, hallucinated authorities, or even covering things that the parties didn't plead in the hearing, then I would say that that might be a cause definitely for concern, and it might be something that you would want to explore setting aside the award, because clearly there has been a potential breach of natural justice.
Brilliant. Another question online is there a risk that the software could be manipulated to produce unfair answers?
I think you might want to take this one.
Yeah, so the question was, is there a risk that the software can be manipulated to produce unfair answers? So the answer is, effectively, it depends how you're kind of using the AI output. If you're using something like ChatGPT, you can ask it to effectively role play. So you can get it to imagine that it's kind of, for example, a malicious actor, and then give your answer kind of tainted with that prompt that you've given it. So there's definitely that risk. I think the way to kind of mitigate that risk is to try and use the model without kind of prompting it, and so that it gives you the answer that you want it to. And if it does kind of cite factual information, see if you can kind of verify that. So this is something that we're trying to, or companies are trying to bring in more of now, which is whenever a factual claim is made, can it link back to the source online where it was found? So that hopefully that should mitigate that manipulation.
Brilliant. Another question is, how do you think AI might be used or impact on the mediation process?
I think that's an important question. I guess first and foremost, the AI tools that we've covered today can help not just in arbitration, but generally in dispute resolution. So there is no reason why you can't rely on LLMs or things like ChatGPT to assist with your mediation process, whether be it assisting your own case and helping internally with that process, or in terms of having a mediator. I think maybe the demo that Kyal went through today gives a bit of an insight as to how potentially an AI agent would be able to give an indication of what the outcome would be, and that might assist parties. And as we all know, mediation is not binding, and it could give an indication of, this is party A's case, this is party B's case, what are the different concerns, and it might assist with that process. But I think, this would be probably the way AI can assist in mediation.
Go on. The example that you showed earlier talked about having 3 AIs effectively running throughout the project, and it was something that would run throughout the project. At the moment, that seems to be limited by price, I would imagine, is the main reason that it's not done. Is that something that will change given what you're considering that acceleration in power?
Yeah, so I think I guess the limiting factors to something like this are price, as you mentioned, but also I don't think current language models are actually smart enough to come up with that kind of output. So that demo was created using like an AI agent. But we kind of supported it. So it was slightly more illustrative. So it's not something that's of current capability, but it's something that we could see like in the near future, as you mentioned. So yeah, cost is definitely one thing that will incentivize the use of something like this in the future. But also I do think we need like more powerful models. But again, we are seeing that the costs are going down and the more powerful models are coming. So yeah, we could see something like this quite soon, potentially like 5 years.
And one here, in March, the ISO issued ISO 32122, which I hope you can quote verbatim, being the standard for online dispute resolution procedures. So the Procedures Rules Committee will be setting out its own standards / guidelines. Where do you see possible challenges presented by developing standards to your vision for AI in dispute resolution?
I'm not personally aware of that.
I think the question is more general, but what do you consider to be the challenges for AI in dispute?
So I think it'd be like a lot of the challenges that we've kind of. Oh yeah, sure. So the question is, what are the challenges of using AI in dispute resolution?
Standards for using AI.
Yeah, and developing standards for using AI in dispute resolution. I think the hard thing is to predict what's going to happen next. We've seen those curves that we showed you, like very rapid kind of progress. So it's actually hard to know what we're going to see of the AI next. There's this thing in AI development of emergent capabilities. So it can almost seem like quite sci-fi and science fiction-y to like imagine what these AIs are capable of. But then we often get like these sudden breakthroughs in technology. So an example would be, we mentioned recursive self-improvement. So this is like AIs improving themselves. So a week ago, Google released a paper saying that they've actually had an AI system been doing this in secret for about a year. And this is the first that anyone's heard of it. So this is kind of an example of emergent capabilities. And I think linking this back to the question of how does it make it difficult to develop standards for use of AI in dispute resolution, it's pretty hard to predict when these actually capabilities are going to emerge. So I think a key thing to consider when doing this is to be prepared for like a wide variety of kind of potential outcomes.
Unless there's any others in the room, I'll end on this one, which is, what is the best way for a novice to start learning about AI and what it can already do?
I guess this talk would have been a good start. So
yeah. So congratulations for turning up to this talk, I guess. But honestly, like ChatGPT is free. So get an account and start playing around with it, and then take it from there. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for today and for your talk. And can you join me in thanking our speakers?